Movement is at the core of any action game, and it's why Wuthering Waves feels so good both in and out of combat. Even the most basic of basics are fun. Take running, for example. Dashing at first uses a tiny bit of stamina, but prolonged sprinting outside of combat doesn't cost any stamina at all. This alone makes movement feel leagues better than so many other games. But the best part is that there's no obstacle in your way that you can't run through. Well, for the most part. When you approach most vertical surfaces, your character will just run straight up it. If you're not sprinting, they'll do a slow climbing animation. But you get such a high stamina cap in this game that you can run straight up pretty much any cliff you want. Not to mention, if ever there's a part of a cliff or a building that gets in your way, the character you're controlling will just flip up over it. It truly feels like you can climb anywhere. While fall damage does exist in Wuthering Waves, it's not very harsh. It takes a pretty big fall for your character to just perish. And there are a few different ways around it. Of course, you can just glide, that's simple. But you can also do a plunge attack from any height and you'll be totally safe. It doesn't deal any damage to your character at all. And it can also be the fastest way of dropping from a great height. Speaking of gliding, all that stamina I mentioned means that you can just glide and glide and glide. If you jump off a high enough surface, you can pretty much get to anywhere you see just by gliding. Seriously, I can't praise this game's generous stamina cap enough. It feels really good. But another neat feature of gliding is that you can swap your characters mid-air. It's not only seamless, helping you prepare for any battles you're about to engage in, but you can use this switching to pull off some cool techniques if you know your stuff. And then there's swimming. Swimming sucks, but there are ways to avoid it, and that feels good. It makes you feel like you're good at the game when you avoid any body of water. I'll come back to this one. Even basic combat maneuvers like dodging feel great, and that's in part because you can do it as many times in a row as you want, as long as you perfect dodge. Spam that dodge button too much, and you'll get punished. So while it's not free, it encourages precision, and it makes you feel really good at the game when you do it right. Just make sure you don't dodge the subscribe button. But as good as the basic movement feels, Wuthering Waves takes it further with character-specific movement. One thing to note is that a character's running speed and jump height is determined by how tall they are. So the shortest characters run the slowest, and the tallest characters run the fastest. I'm not sure if this is something I love or hate, but it's definitely noticeable when I'm playing Verena. So it's a pretty good thing that Verena has a trick up her sleeve that helps offset her slow run speed, and that's this little slide she can do. It uses up some stamina, so you can't do it infinitely, but she can do it a good few times in a row if you want that extra boost. Meanwhile, someone like GN is both very tall and has a cool trick up his sleeve. He can actually use his resonance skill in midair, and that opens up a whole world of movement for him. But again, we'll come back to this. What I want to know is, which character is your favorite to run around as? Which one feels the best? Wuthering Waves' main gimmick is its ecosystem, which allows you to collect a bunch of different creatures, each capable of doing something unique, which, depending on the skill, can be useful either in or out of combat. Take Inferno Rider. You might know that by holding down the Echo skill button, you can transform into Inferno Rider and drive around for a few seconds. Definitely one of the more awesome transformations in the game. But there are ways around that limited time you can stay transformed. If you want to keep driving, you could, for example, set up a secondary team of any 3 characters, equip them all with Inferno Rider, and then keep swapping between them, each one using Inferno Rider's movement skill. Then you can drive for as long as you want. Or until you accidentally tap the button instead of holding it down, and Inferno Rider just whacks the air. Then when you're done going wherever you want to go, just swap back to your main team who's got all the damage echoes on. Impermanence Heron can only be used while you're on the ground, but if you hold the Echo skill, it actually launches you a little bit into the air. I'm not exactly sure if this is useful for anything, but it might give you a bit of a boost if you need it somewhere. Remember how I mentioned that water sucks? Well, some echoes can actually be used for movement in midair, including the little herons. So if you really want to go places, you can do something like give GN a heron and alternate between gliding, dashing midair for an extra boost, using his resonance skill, and using his echo skill. With all this combined, you can cross much larger distances than you'd ordinarily be able to. And I just think it's so cool that the more you explore these systems, the more cool things you can find, the more joy you can get out of something as simple as movement. I've seen some really cool techniques out there that I don't even know how to pull off yet, and that just gets me so excited. Backflipping in itself is a really useful way to gain some extra height and get up on surfaces you might not be able to with a normal jump. Definitely make sure not to sleep on that, like I do. The sheer verticality of the terrain in Huanglong really lends itself to this idea that movement should be fun and every step you take should be something that you enjoy. Just to hammer in that point, the grapple is a utility that you can use on cooldown, which will allow you to gain some extra height. Combine that with some other techniques and you'll be surprised at how creative you can get. But there are also context-sensitive grapple points that you can use just by facing and work without swapping your utility out in case you don't have the grapple equipped, and they have no cooldown. So there are plenty of opportunities to Spider-Man your way across the world as well. And it's so fast that it feels great. It's always the best option whenever it presents itself. I would love to see even more of these spread across the world going forward. Seriously, it is so good that you do not need to have your grapple equipped to use these. The game's only been out for a few weeks at this point, but ever since the first closed beta test, I have been absolutely smitten with the movement in this game. It's the #1 thing that keeps me coming back, even more so than the combat itself, which is also excellent. This barely scratches the surface of what you can do with movement in Wuthering Waves, and I would love to hear your favorite movement tips in the comments. And while the movement feels almost perfect, the same can't be said about the game's launch, but in this video, you can find out just how far the developers went to fix it, including moving the schedule of the game a week forward.